Okay, we're going to finish out Maccabees today. But I just want to say, stick with me. I know it got a little confusing there, but you don't want to miss this book. There's so much good stuff in here. Okay, so hang on and let's get started. So I usually start out the new one. We know we're starting 13 and we only have to go to 16. So let me start with this so it helps. Where are Maccabees? Wow, I read this great story. Actually, it was 2 whole books in my Bible last night. We're only doing the one. And there's some really good stuff in the second one, but we're going to do that after the 30-day. There were tons of battles and other military stuff. It was so good, I stayed up all night. Mike was so excited, he told Pat. And Pat couldn't find it in her Bible. She's like, Maccabees 1, where is that? The next day, they find out, oh, no, it wasn't in my Bible. So they couldn't figure it out. They went to their pastors, and the pastor said, because we know the protesters don't have it in their Bibles, and they also don't have Tobit and Judith and Wisdom, Sirach, and books of Esther, Barak, and Daniel. So obviously they're not in the protester Bibles. Pat and Mike decided they wouldn't argue over it, which Bible was right, because there are too many, and it's all about the language. It wasn't written in Hebrew and all that, so the other Christians don't have it in there. But Pat and Mike decided they wouldn't argue over who was right. They had too many things they agree on. That's very good, but we must argue for the truth, and not argue, but just, debate is okay. So Simon takes command. Simon heard that Trypho assembled a large army to invade the land of Judah and destroy it. He thought people were trembling and fearful. So he went to Jerusalem and tried to encourage others. And here it has exactly what he said. It's too long to read, but they told him now he was their leader in place of Judah and Jonathan, your brothers. So, hold on. So he assembled all the warriors quickly. I think we still have a little bit here. And completed the walls of Jerusalem and fortified it on every side. And then he sent another Jonathan, the son of Absalom, to Joppa with a considerable army and drove out occupants that remained there. So say, the son of Absalom. So that's the next Jonathan they're talking about. That also gets confusing when people have the same names. We have the same names in our family, repeated. One time someone came to one of our funerals and said, do you people know any other names? So it was funny. Deceit and treachery over Trypho. Trypho departed with a large army to invade the land of Judah. He learned that Simon had risen up in place of Jonathan, his brother. So then they said, we have Jonathan, your brother. See, they hadn't killed him quite yet. He owed the royal treasury, and we are detaining him, send now 100 pounds of silver and 2 tons, of silver. Yeah. 100 talents of silver, and 2 of his sons as hostage. Sorry. So when he is released, he will not come against us, and we will release him. So Simon knew they were speaking deceitfully, but he sent the money and the sons so he wouldn't arouse hostility among the people, and they wouldn't blame him. So he sent the money, 100 talents, but Trypho broke his word and did not release Jonathan. After that, Trypho came to invade the land of Judah and destroy it. Let's see. He got his cavalry ready to go, but that night a very heavy snow fell. So he didn't go because of the snow, and he just killed Jonathan instead of playing with him. And he was buried there. Then Trypho turned back and departed for his own land, because I guess he didn't want to bother because of the snow. He's like, you know what, I'm going to go home and be warm instead. And meanwhile, he killed Jonathan. So, Jonathan's tomb. Simon sent and took the bones of Jonathan, his brother, and buried them in Modin, the city of their fathers. And all Israel wailed over him with great lamentation and mourning for many days. So that was sad. Simon built a monument over the tomb of his fathers and brothers. He made it high that it might be seen in polished stone front and back, and he directed 7 pyramids opposite one another for his father, mother, and 4 brothers, and erected Greek columns and put suits of armors for a permanent memorial. And besides those, he put carved ships so that they could all be seen by those who sail the sea. This is a tomb he built in Modin, and it remains to this day. I wonder if it does. Maybe that's one of the things that Jeff Caven shows people on his trips over there. So if it's really still there, I'm sure. Judea gains independence. Trypho dealt treacherously with the young king Antiochus. He killed him. Poor young kid. And he became king in his place and put on the crown of Asia as well. He brought great calamity to the land. But Simon builds up the strongholds of Judea and walled them off with high towers and great walls with huge gates and bolts. They stored the food in the strongholds. And Simon also chose men and sent them to Demetrius the king with a request to grant relief. For all Tryphus did was to plunder. Demetrius the king sent him a favorable reply to his request and wrote him a letter, and the letter is here. It's beautiful. He granted everything he asked for, and he also pardoned any errors committed and canceled the crown tax. So see, they're doing a lot of similar things. Okay. So in the year 170th year, the yoke of Gentiles was removed from Israel, and the people began to write in their documents and contacts in their first year of Simon. So this is called the first year of Simon, the great high priest and commander and leader of the Jews. The capture of Gazara by Simon. Simon surrounded Gazara, battered and captured one tower. The people came out with their clothes torn and cried in a loud voice, asking Simon to make peace with them. They said, do not, whoops, sorry, this fan, I turned it down, but it still keeps doing that. Asking Simon to make peace with them. They said, do not treat us according to our wickedness, but according to your mercy. So Simon reached an agreement to stop fighting against them, but expelled them from the city and cleansed the house in which the items were, and he entered with hymns and praise. He cast out all the uncleanliness and settled in with men who observed the law, and he also strengthened it with fortification and built in it a house for himself. So that was nice. So Simon regains the citadel. The men in the citadel at Jerusalem were preventing it from going out into the country, but were prevented from going back into the country to buy it back or sell. So they were very hungry, and many perished from the famine. So no one can get in or get out to get food. They cried to Simon to make peace with them, and he did, but he expelled them from there, cleansed the citadel from its pollutions. And then in the 9th month, let me see. Okay, I think. In the 2nd month of the 171st year, the Jews entered it with praise and palm branches, with harps and cymbals and string instruments, with hymns and songs, because the great enemy had been crushed and removed from Israel. So that was good. And Simon decreed that every year they should celebrate this day with rejoicing it. He strengthened the temple hill and the citadel, and the men dwelt there. And Simon saw that John, his son, had reached manhood, so he made him commander of all the forces, and he dwelt in Gazara. I want to look up if some of these places are like now Gaza or whatever. I want to look that up. I just don't have time in these 30 days. It's been a lot to do this. It was really hard. But anyway, capture of Demetrius, the eulogy of Simon. In the 172nd year, Demetrius the king assembled forces so he could make war against Trypho. When Arsaces, the king of Persia, heard Demetria invaded, he sent one of his commanders to take him alive, and he went and defeated the army of Demetrius and seized him and took him to Arsaces and put him under guard. The land had rest all the days of Simon. He sought the good of the nation. His rule was pleasing to them, and it was an honor shown him in all his days. So, then it has some beautiful language. You might want to look at all that. Diplomacy with Rome and Sparta. It was heard in Rome and as far away as Sparta that Jonathan had died. They were Greek. Do you see how it goes backward in time, and that's what makes it confusing at times? When they heard that Simon, his brother, had become high priest in his place, and he was ruling over the country, they wrote to him on bronze tablets to renew with him the friendship and alliance they had established with Judah and Jonathan, his brothers, and they were read before the assembly in Jerusalem. And there's a beautiful copy of the letter in here if you want to read it under First Book of Maccabees 14. So, afterwards, Simon sent Numenius to Rome with a large gold shield weighing 1,000 minas to confirm the alliance with the Romans. Yeah, so he sent that to confirm the alliance. Official honors for Simon. When the people heard these things, they said how we should thank Simon and his sons and he and his brothers and the house of the father that stood firm and had fought and repulsed Israel's enemies and established its freedom. So they put a record on bronze tablets and put it up on the pillars on Mount Zion. And there's a beautiful copy of it you can read right here in the Bible, First Book of Maccabees, verse 25 through 30. Or 25 through 28. So this goes on about everything. It's a lot of repeating, There's a lot of repeating in the Bible, but it's nice because they put it in different ways, but we don't have time to say it all here. So King Demetrius confirmed Simon into the high priesthood and paid him high honors, and the Jews decided Simon should be their leader and the high priest forever until a trustworthy prophet should arise, and he should be governor over them and take charge of the sanctuary, and he did all that. And the people agreed to grant Simon the right to act in accord with these decisions. So Simon accepted and agreed to be high priest, commander, and protector of them all, and they inscribed bronze tablets. Maccabee 15, letter to Antiochus 7. Antiochus, the son of Demetrius the king, sent a letter to sign in the priest and all the nation, and that is included. You can read it in Maccabees verse 15. It says, I've gained control of the kingdom to our fathers, and I intend to lay claim of the kingdom and restore it as it formerly was. And he says, I confirm all the tax remissions that the kings before me have granted you, and release from all other payments from which they released you. I permit you to mint your own coinage and as money for your own country, and I grant freedom to Jerusalem in the sanctuary. And everything, weapons, strongholds, shall remain yours, and every debt that it says that you owed will be canceled. Anything you owed to the royal treasury, canceled for all time. And he says, we will give you a great honor upon you and your nation, so that your glory will become manifest on earth. So, in the 174th BC, Antiochus invaded the land of his fathers, and he pursued Trypho. Antiochus had 124 warriors, 8 cavalry, and he surrounded the city and permitted no one to leave or enter. Okay. So Rome supports the Jews. Numenius and his companions arrived in Rome with letters to the kings about the Jews becoming friends and allies and renewing our ancient friendship and alliance. And they wrote to the kings in countries that, that they should not be harmed and or go after Israel or make war with them. And they asked if any pestilent men from there or who have fled to hand them over to Simon the high priest so that he could punish them according to their law. So he's just essentially giving them their freedom and letting everyone know they're free now. So you have anyone, just take it to them. Antiochus the seventh threatens Simon. Antiochus the king made words of war to Simon, so he sent 2,000 picked men to fight for him and silver and gold military equipment, but he refused to receive them and broke all agreements he formerly had made with Simon. And he said, "You devastated their territory, you have done great damage to the land, you've taken possessions of places in my kingdom," and he demands money for it. So Simon says, he sends a friend and he says, "We have neither taken foreign land, foreign property, but only the inheritance of our fathers, which at one time had been unjustly taken by our enemies. And we are holding firmly to the inheritance of our fathers." And he offered him some money, 100 talents, but the message was returned with wrath. And so it really made the king angry. So this is the last one. Victory over Candace. Trypho embarked on the ship to escape Orthasia. He gave the commander-in-chief Candace to make war on Judea, but the king pursued Trypho, Candace, and began to provoke the people in invading Judea and take the people captive and kill them. So John went up from Gazera, this is the son of Simon, and reported to Simon his father what Candace had done. Simon called his 2 older sons, Judas and John, and told them, "My father and my brothers have fought wars for Israel from our youth until this day, and things have prospered in our hands. We delivered Israel many times, but now I have grown old, take my place and my brothers and go out and fight for our nation, and may the help which comes from heaven be with you." So John chose 20,000 warriors and horsemen, and they marched to meet them. They crossed over the stream and divided the army and sounded the trumpet, and Candace and the armies were put to fight, and many were wounded and died, and the rest were led into the stronghold. At that time, Judas, the brother of John, was wounded, but John pursued them until Candace reached Kendron, which he built, and also fled into the towers. John burned them down with fire, and 2,000 of them died, and he returned to Judea safely. The murder of Simon and his sons. Ptolemy, the son of Ababus, had been appointed a governor over Jericho, and he made treacherous plans against Simon and his sons to do away with them. Now Simon was visiting when he went down to Jericho with Matthias and Judas' sons in the year 177 in the 11th month, which is the month of Shabbat. Wow, another month. I got to look into these. He gave them a great banquet, and when Simon and his sons were drunk, he rose up, took their weapons, and rushed in against Simon in the banquet hall, and they killed him and his 2 sons and some of his servants. They committed a great act of great treachery and returned evil for good. John succeeds Simon. Then Ptolemy wrote a letter about these things and sent it to the king. He sent the other men to Zara to do away with John. He sent other men to take possession of Jerusalem. But someone ran ahead and reported it to John. His father and brothers had been punished. And when he heard this, he was very shocked, and he seized the men who came to destroy him and killed them. And the rest of the acts of John, and his wars and the brave deeds which he did, and the building of the walls which he built, and his achievements, behold, they are written in the chronicles of his high priesthood from the time that he became high priest after his father. So there's stuff in there about the priesthood in that too. And was there something else in here I wanted to show you? This is where they say the Lord's power determined the outcome. They trusted him. And this is where Judas and his men saw a vast army attacking the fortress. That's where the king went to bed in a fit of depression in 6. There wasn't a whole lot in here, like their boxes. This is kept words and saw a noisy crowd loaded down with baggage. The daughter and him, Cleopatra, left Egypt. I'm just going backwards a little bit because there wasn't a whole lot in here. This is they were panic-stricken and fled, leaving their campfires burning in 12. And this is Simon and the men entering the fort in 13. Let's see. There's some really exciting things that happen in 2. What goes around comes around. This expresses simple truth presented in 2 Maccabees. Living the good, just faithful life, keeping God in front will bring you great blessings. If not in this life, then your blessings will come in eternal life, heaven. If you are evil and power hungry and thrive on hurting others, you will suffer either in this life or the next. The second book of Maccabees reveals stories of the best and the worst kinds of people and tells why and how they love God faithfully or reject God completely. As you read this book, you will be inspired, angered, horrified, challenged by their stories. You will also understand the ups and downs of the Jewish people faced during this time of persecution. This basically goes over some of the stuff, the same stuff. Like I said, it overlaps, but who are the central characters? So see all the same people, but it just gets a little deeper. And so pray for your enemies, some of the themes. There are many paths to peace besides war. God's faithful may suffer, but justice will eventually be served. If not in this life, then the resurrection of the dead. Pray for those who have died and know that they pray for you too. So there's some really cool stuff in this one. I looked ahead. So only because I had a few extra minutes, I wanted to. This talks about Hanukkah. Second Maccabees actually starts with 2 letters written to the Jews in Egypt, and the second letter being invited to celebrate the festival known as Hanukkah. So that was interesting. Praying for enemies. Jesus taught us when someone hurts us, we should not hurt them back, which is normally just the thing we want to do. Not only are we supposed to love our enemies. The high priest Ananias shows us one way to do this. The Greek's king representative was going to take all the gold from the Jewish treasury, but he arrived. He was attacked by the angels. See, there's a little bit more of like the prophet type stuff in here. And I love those. So I'm going to read this after the 30-day challenge. The price of evil. Ananias. All about Ananias. The story in here. So we'll go over that after. Integrity. Eleazar had the chance to trick the Greeks and save his life, but he wouldn't do it. See, I was wondering what happened with the other brother of the Maccabees. So there's a little bit more in there about him, and nonviolent resistance and eternal life. So we'll do the second book of Maccabees after the 30 days. God's mercy returns. Is God violent? So there's a lot of good stuff in here. Prayer for protection in Psalms 140. So let me see if there's anything else. Just some pictures. Nice pictures. Praying for the dead. Yeah. They were found wearing idols. And it talks about that. Peace talks. So it's overlapping, but intercession of the saints. This is why the Protestants are confused, because they don't have that and they don't understand it. So, and that's the end of that one. So, and that's how things turned out for Nicanor. And We know it's unhealthy to drink wine or water alone. Oh, okay. So there must be something in there about that. So that's interesting. So, okay. So, guess what? We're going to the gospel now. Yay! That's the 11th period, and then Acts, and then we're done. So I may be just a tad bit over the 30, although I did start on the 4th of this month, or of last month. So I technically have 3 more days. If we go by a month, I'd have to count to see if the 30 days. But anyway, okay. See ya.